I get those goosebumps every time.
I just have to get the big fella off the bench.
Could this be their last chance now? In it comes, Monster to the far post! He scored! Harry Monster scored!
I'm way too numb, yeah. It's way too numb, yeah. I get those goosebumps every time. I need that line to throw that to the side, yeah. I get those goosebumps every time, yeah. When you're not around, when you throw that to the side, yeah. I get those goosebumps every time, yeah. 713 through the 21, yeah, I'm riding. Why they on me? Why they on me? I'm riding. I'm slipping low key. I'm slipping low key and hiding. I get those goosebumps every time. I'm around, yeah. You ease my mind. You make everything feel fine. Worry about those comments. I'm way too numb, yeah. It's way too dumb, yeah. I get those goosebumps every time. I need the hype.
Hello. Welcome back to Loading Mag NUFC, fully transfer show with a Ben Jacobs special tonight. We're back again. It seems like we're on here every day now. But this is January transfer window. This is what it's all about. So welcome all in the chat. Daz, Chris, how are you guys?
I'm good, not too bad. Essentially, just busy. Pretty much kept going, but I had a laugh at this one from just came in there from Jason Scott. Cheeky, you're trying to get us going, are you, early, Jason? But I'm sure we'll get into that one pretty soon. How are you, Chris?
Good, mate. Just tired. Just really tired. But yeah, I'm very, very good. Delighted to be on with you lads. And yeah, it's transfer season, isn't it? And that equals shows. And we love talking all things Newcastle. And as Jason said, there's a couple of things to talk about. So really looking forward to speaking with Ben.
Sorry, I have to draw attention to another one here because it's quality as well. Oliver B, cut the crap. Is the Phillips deal done?
Well, match with me and Daz are wearing these colours.
No. Mine has a Newcastle badge on it.
How are you, Pete? All right, mate?
Yeah, all good. Keeping my head out for any sort of transfer-related news, and there is a fair bit going on. A lot of opinions with regards to Newcastle transfers at the moment, and I'm sure we'll get into that. And look, Ben Jacobs is on his way. That is for sure. But housekeeping people, do all the good stuff. If you haven't already, click those likes and subscribe to the channel. And look, first and foremost, at 6:30 on a Wednesday evening, thank you for tuning in and watching us and supporting all things within the channel. As I say, do those good things, click that like button and show your support. Thank you very, very much. So many comments in the chat as always. Get your questions in for Ben. He is aware that we'll be throwing some questions at him, no doubt, about some of the players that we are going to discuss at some point as this show runs on. But look, just boys, what are your thoughts so far with regards to some of the links in the transfer window with regards to Newcastle United? We'll talk about specifics of those in the show, but are you still confident we'll get at least one in, Daz? You thinking we'll at least get one in?
Yeah, we'll definitely get one in. But I think we get more than one. But yeah, it's going to be later in the window, as we know at this stage. If they had something in mind, that we'd have different types of shows now. So yeah, I think we're going to get Phillips, and then I think we're going to get to it later on. But I think if this story is to be half believed that came out today, it shows that there's some money there ready to lay down, and some player, not the one they're talking about.
Definitely, Chris. Are you still in the mindset that will bring somebody in? There's a lot of fans. Sorry, there's a lot of fans that are at the moment on social media adamant that no deals are going to be done, that we're not going to get anyone, not even the ones that have been heavily linked, like the likes of Kalvin Phillips. Are you still confident, mate?
Yeah, no, absolutely, mate. And I suppose maybe that narrative's coming from the fact that Eddie said after the Sunderland game that they weren't looking at anyone and that no one was close. But I think we all know, and the journalists and the reporters who were always at the pre and post match conferences, they openly know that Eddie Howe is known to tell the odd little white lie. So yeah, I firmly believe that we will see. I think we'll actually see some incomings and outgoings this month. I'm not ruling that out. I mean, we remember not too long ago, when Chris Wood dramatically left, and also John Joe Shelby in the same window, and we were all scratching our heads going, didn't see that coming. But I do think there is an opportunity for us to move some players out, and I think at least 2 will come in. That's my genuine opinion. I think at least 2 will come in, and I think a minimum of 2 is what we need. What positions? I'm sure everyone will have their own opinion on that. But I think we need at least 2 just to freshen the squad up and make sure that we have a strong second half to the season.
Yeah, I think I'm the same. I'm still confident that we'll get players in. There's no doubt about it. But let's ask the main man who's waiting patiently in the green room. So let's bring him in. Pleasure to have back Ben Jacobs to talk all things Newcastle United. To welcome him in.
Welcome, Ben, Leicester's finest.
Good evening, everyone. Good to be here. No doubt Pete's happy because his side are currently top of the table.
I knew that was coming at some point.
Every time.
Unfortunately, Newcastle are not top of the table, but I know your boys, Leicester City, are. You must be very happy with what you're seeing so far.
Delighted. I think they're looking not only in good shape, but I would wager if they came back up, they should never have gone down in the first place, that they stand a decent chance of consolidating. Not one of those where I think they might win the league or get automatic promotion and then struggle. There's too much quality in that side. It's a shame we lost Harvey Barnes to Newcastle. It's a shame he's injured as well. And let's hope we get a game next season at St James's Park, Newcastle-Leicester, as is known as the Pete's Derby.
The Peter Ben derby, because remember, you still got that Newcastle top. I still remember it, and
I do. I got a Newcastle mug as well that someone sent me with Leicester on one side and Newcastle on the other side.
Fair play. But no, honestly, Ben, I know you are very, very busy at this moment in time, so really do appreciate you taking the time to come and join us. And we're just going to get straight into it. Look. There's been a lot of to and fro with regards to Newcastle in this transfer window. Lots of fans in the build-up with our injury list mounting up in December, but adamant that we needed to go and sign some players. There were rumours at the beginning of the window that we weren't going to be active, but in your mind, at this stage right now, where do you see Newcastle United and their activity towards the second half of the window? Are we going to get maybe 1 or 2 players in, or you think it's going to be a case of wait and see? What are your thoughts on where we're at right now?
Well, I do think that, unfortunately, not qualifying for European football in the second half of the season and no guarantee league position-wise of European football next season. A good chance, of course, but no guarantees. They're going to have to be a bit more conservative. But by the same token, it's clear that they need to strengthen. And it's almost catch-22, isn't it? You can be conservative because of finances and because of a lack of guaranteed European football either next season or income from this season and the second half of the season as far as Europe is concerned. And then by being conservative, guess what? You might not finish in the top 6, top 5. That could be Champions League, remember, or top 4. On the flip side, if you spend, and that's not just about money for fees, it's also about maybe increasing the wage bill as well, then it can backfire. And they do have to think about sustainability. This notion of PIF and unlimited riches has always been more in the media than reality. It's been a very sensible ownership as far as spending is concerned. So I think that Eddie Howe, as you said before, can be coy and some things can be taken with a pinch of salt. But I do genuinely believe that Newcastle will look to bring in maybe 1, and it might have to be a loan, but maybe a loan with an option. And then obviously Lewis Hall will become a permanent signing. That's almost certain. I know that's not crazy exciting to the Newcastle fan base, but that's technically another one that will eventually become a loan via the obligation, which needs to be triggered and is, we're told, performance related. And then position-wise, I still think we're looking at the midfield as the priority. But I'm a little bit kind of torn because on paper, you've got the Tonali ban, and you think, okay, they need to bring in a midfielder and then some kind of creative-minded player, because unfortunately they've had a little bit of bad luck as far as the front three is concerned. And Barnes is underrated in that respect because he's kind of come in, and before we've seen what he's really capable of, you have him sidelined and you forget that he was double figures in the Premier League last season for Leicester. So Newcastle are not far off. They just need a few more goals and a bit of luck with injuries, as do many sides seemingly this season in the Premier League. And then they'll be okay, which is why I don't think that Eddie Howe is under as much pressure as maybe is being billed in certain quarters. But the reason that I'm torn is because this 4-3-3. Because when you consider Joe Linton can go midfield or play in a front three, then if Tonali's banned, you've still got potentially Joe Linton, you've got Bruno, you've got Longstaff, you've got Elliot Anderson when he is fit and available, you've got Lewis Miley. So because it is only a 3, it's not a 4. And because that 3 are, I think, relatively self-selecting when everyone's fit, I'm not sure that they need to rush. If Kalvin Phillips comes in, and if, let's just say, Gordon's fit, Isak and Wilson, and then Miguel Almiron, then you're basically going to pick 3 of those 4. And I think that Joe Linton goes back into midfield with Bruno, and you've got one more midfield spot. And that might be Kalvin Phillips, but it could also be Sean Longstaff, who I think when Eddie Howe reintroduced him in the earlier part of the season was brilliant. So it's a conundrum only because when Newcastle have a sort of not even fit 11, but kind of squad of 15 or so that Howe can chop and change within that 3 midfield or that 3 front line, they're okay. There is enough depth there, especially now there isn't European football. So you got to be able to bring in the right player, whereas adding, I think, bodies for the sake of adding bodies will be counterproductive. And that's where I think that if the right targets are not available, I don't see Newcastle panic buying.
You talked quite interestingly about the right sort of targets. Now, a player that's been linked heavily with Newcastle United way before the window opened, and look, you've already sort of mentioned him already, is Kalvin Phillips. There has been lots of conversations around a loan move. He was rested at the weekend in the FA Cup. He wasn't playing. People were speculating that it was to ensure that he wasn't cup tied. In the Athletic, Chris Woff wrote a piece with regards to Kalvin Phillips, and actually mentioned that there is hope now where there maybe wasn't maybe a week ago that deal could potentially get done. What do you know from your side of things and from what you've kind of been reporting on Kalvin Phillips?
Yeah, I think it's normal that Newcastle would wait because they're in a stronger position, because they know deep down that Manchester City, and more importantly, Phillips, wants to deal with the situation and get minutes. And minutes is key to Phillips because there's now quite a lot of competition, I think, for midfield spots at Euro 2024. And maybe there was a feeling at the beginning of the season that Phillips would always be picked because Southgate rewarded the more loyal selections that have helped him in the past. But now I'm not so sure, because you've got Rico Lewis, Curtis Jones having a good season. I don't think you can rule out Conor Gallagher on current form. So Phillips and also Jordan Henderson, who we might talk about in a moment, I think are starting to sweat that guaranteed a place. Whereas 6 months ago, I think there was a bit more nonchalance. I think Henderson moved to Saudi Arabia and felt like there were guarantees from Southgate. And I think Phillips felt like he was always getting picked, even though he was never really a Manchester City starter. And 15, 20 odd appearances a season might be enough. Now I think it needs resolving. So the reason why I say it's normal Newcastle might wait is because right at the beginning of the window, Manchester City are going to ask for the world, and Newcastle are not going to be able to facilitate a transfer on Manchester City's terms. But now, like we've also seen, by the way, with Sancho, where Manchester United wanted an obligation over the summer and at the beginning of the window, and it was just a straight loan, and quite a cheap one, I think, although there's like variable clauses. And I think it will be the same with Phillips. Sometimes people forget about the structure. I'm always banging on about this. It doesn't really matter what the number is. If Manchester City, for example, are looking for something in the region of 7 million loan fee with all things considered, that might sound ridiculous, but it might only be 3.5. And then 3.5 could be if Newcastle qualify for the Champions League, and then you're gladly paying that. So the structure's way more important. And it's the same with the Sancho deal. It feels low, but it will go higher if Dortmund qualify for the Champions League. And these are key things to understand. And as time's running out, the buyer maybe gets a little bit of advantage when the player has to resolve their situation. So I still think this is one to watch, especially because Juventus, who were the ones that were actually advancing things in a club-to-club sense, aren't in the race now. And it's not true to my understanding that PSG were ever in the mix for Kalvin Phillips. So at the moment, if Newcastle choose to move, they'll have a relatively clear run. And that's when I think there'll be a more advantageous position as far as negotiations are concerned. What I would say is that we should look at this saga as now, not yesterday, last week, last month. It's been known for quite a while, as I've reported, that Phillips has been under consideration at Newcastle, but it's not true to my understanding that they've opened any kind of formal talks. So we've heard a lot about Newcastle are optimistic. Perhaps that's true internally, and some sources do back that up. But we've also seen a lot about Newcastle have started talks, Newcastle are advancing talks, Newcastle are close to Kalvin Phillips. How can you be closer or advance anything if you've held no club-to-club talks? And that is my understanding at the point we're speaking at the moment. So you can work the player side, you can make maybe informal type feelers if there's intermediaries involved, although I don't think there will be in this case. Sometimes you can start to kind of feel out the lay of the land and do the legwork. But the truth is, it's a really simple deal for Newcastle. They need a midfielder. They can't pay a lot of money. They want a loan. And then is there going to be an option to buy, an obligation to buy, or nothing? And then the loan fee will be higher, but variable based on clauses, as I said, like do Newcastle qualify for Europe or Champions League football? And then it will go up. So I think that this is probably a low-hanging fruit for Newcastle if they choose to move in the last 2 weeks of the window. It feels like they can get it done, and it makes a lot of sense to all parties. But once again, it may change very quickly. It may change tonight, tomorrow, but at the actual time we're recording this, they haven't had a single formal conversation yet with Manchester City. Maybe they're waiting tactically, maybe they're waiting financially, maybe they're waiting because at the beginning of the window there was a feeling that Phillips might want to go abroad. It could be a variety of things. Maybe they're waiting because they're not going to move. But all this wave of reports suggesting that things are advancing are just a fraction premature when you consider that first you've actually got to pick up the phone.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting one. And look, boys, we've talked about this as well, and said that Newcastle are going to be smart in this window. They're not going to go necessarily gung-ho out there, sort of, making it known that they're going to be signing these players. We heard Eddie Howe at the weekend, and Chris, you put it in our chat, didn't you? You said, Eddie Howe's comments of, he's not even looking at any player at this moment in time. And a lot of people are saying, he's up to his old tricks again, but it seems like it's going to be, like I say, a game of chess has been mentioned, and I think there's a few more pieces to go with that. That's for sure. But look, I'm going to move on just because there are a number of things and a number of players that we're going to get through. I'm going to bring it up now because it came out of the blue today, and literally the whole chat has just been like,
here we go,
from when it came out. So to everybody's surprise, I would say the Telegraph came out, and Mike McGrath on the Telegraph came out and with this piece that Newcastle make a move for Bournemouth striker Dominic Solanki. An interesting one, and one that I wasn't expecting to come out. Another striker. A lot of people have kind of turned their nose up at this potential deal. It does say that actually, that they did inquire, and that Bournemouth are not too keen. But look, just what do you know from this perspective on sort of Dominic Solanki, Ben?
Well, I think the first thing to say is that Eddie Howe signed the player previously, so we know that there's a link between manager and player, and we also know that he's in incredible form. So the story is being denied by sources close to Bournemouth, which is sort of normal in some ways because windows are all about protecting your position. And if you make an inquiry and then it's batted away, then it can be quite commonplace for both prospective buyer and seller to deny it. I've got a lot of respect, by the way, for Mike McGrath. I think he's a top journalist, always well sourced. And what I can tell you is that Newcastle do really like Solanki, not just because the Howe connections, but Dan Ashworth as well. I think this is one for the summer, to be perfectly honest, both financially and feasibly. I can't see anything happening in January. We know that Iraola has no desire or the Bournemouth hierarchy to let the player go. And the other thing is that Bournemouth have changed now under Bill Foley. They're far more bullish in terms of their overall stature and standing. And that's because things come from owners down. And Foley's kind of come in and spent a lot of money and been highly ambitious. And it was a big, big call bringing in Iraola as well. And he didn't start well. And now they're flying. So Solanki, I'm told, has got no real interest in leaving mid-season because his priority is ultimately, as you might expect, to start every game. No guarantees that he does that at Newcastle. I know people look at the goals that he scored and say, if you invest in him, of course he plays every game, but there's still no absolute guarantees, in my opinion, because his form's been a little bit of a surprise. And for Solanki, he doesn't want to go mid-season and find that he's not playing every game. He's only ever won, I think, one England cap, and that was back in 2017. Could he be in the mix somehow for Euro 2024? It's not beyond the realms of possibility, but I think if he was going to be in the mix, then a move mid-season could potentially be a little bit risky. So I'm told that this is one to watch across the summer, and naturally there's other clubs looking at him. For example, Tottenham are another one that may look at him, but I don't think that anything's possible in January. And unfortunately for Newcastle fans listening, the Bournemouth sources that I'm speaking to are denying it. Maybe we can take that with a pinch of salt because, again, I point out that Mike is a really top journalist who is really well sourced. And inquiries can be quite vague if they are informal, if they don't equate to offers and so on, they can be denied. But from the players' camp, who I've also been to, I'm told that a mid-season move is not preferable. And the other thing in all of this as well is that at the moment, Solanki is best in this kind of 4-2-3-1 formation, and Newcastle are playing a 4-3-3. And the reason why he's thriving in many ways is because he's got the focal point, and he's got someone, for example, like Justin Kluivert's been playing behind him. He's chipping in with a few goals. Semenya and Tavernier are playing really well too. And that 4-2-3-1 suits him. And guess what? That is in a central position. And in my opinion, if you have Isak fit, he wants to play central. We know that. He can go wide in a 4-3-3, but he wants to play central. If you've got Wilson fit, he's a central striker. So what are Newcastle screaming for? Probably someone with a bit more versatility that can play anywhere, or certainly left or right and centrally within that 4-3-3. And even if that is Solanki, it's not his preferred position. And therefore, unless you're going to say to Isak, go out wide because Solanki is going to play central, I think it's really tricky because all season long he's excelling because he's the one in the 4-2-3-1. The other thing is, could hypothetically Howe change his formation? We haven't really seen it. It's not unthinkable that you go to a 4-2-3-1, but I find it quite hard to kind of put everyone in because, of course, in that three, you could have a fit Anthony Gordon and a Miguel Almiron, and then who's playing behind the striker? Could you say to Solanki, you got to play behind Isak or Wilson? And is he happy with that? Well, again, it's not the role where he's excelling. And also, you remove one of your holding midfield spots. So maybe Joe Linton says, well, I want to be behind the striker because I can play in a more advanced position. Maybe Bruno says, I want to play in that role that Kluivert's currently playing in for Bournemouth. And then you're left needing two kind of really disciplined holding midfielders. And guess what? That's a role that might suit Sandro Tonali, who's banned. That's a role that, yes, could also suit Bruno. But what about Elliot Anderson or Lewis Miley? They prefer, in my opinion, and stylistically, being in that 4-3-3. So it might not feel a big difference, 4-2-3-1, 4-3-2-1, 4-3-3. These are all formations that modern footballers should be able to handle. But you've got to think about Newcastle, and their success has been framed upon quite a tactical consistency. We know Eddie Howe likes 4-3-3. We know he likes counter-attack. We know he likes width. And we know that what he's got, there's plenty of options to play centrally. So I think that something would have to give. If it's a summer signing, I suppose you could say, well, maybe it's a phase out of Wilson because he's obviously getting on a bit, and it's a phase in of Solanki plus Isak competing for that central role. That's fine. That makes a lot of sense. But I don't see anything happening imminently, but it could well be one to watch for the summer.
I want to get your thoughts on this, boys. Dominic Solanki.
Bring it on.
Dominic Solanki. All the talk about it in the links that come out this afternoon. What do you make of what Ben said? Potentially a summer deal. Is it a player that you boys would look at?
For me, no. I know Ben was on, and I'll link in the question for Ben here. So I know, Ben, you were on with Fabrizio Romano today talking about Man United on the channel today. But on one of the topics that came up was Dan Ashworth in that. That's the question I want to get to. But just on Solanki, for me, I'm fully behind Eddie Howe and Dan Ashworth. I want them to guide us forward. But if we bring in Solanki, I'm putting in my first vote of no confidence in Eddie Howe and Dan Ashworth, because this is not what in the script of what we should be doing moving forward. I guess he a lot of the time he's brought in English players. It's a mixture, but this is not a good move. It took him so long. He's had a great season this year, Solanki, but it's taken him so long to get there. And I remember watching him over the last couple of seasons going, he misses so many chances. He's not for me. He's not an improvement on where we need to go. And just because he's English and just because Eddie Howe was worked with him before, it's not good enough for me. And I think this season he's having his Miggy season. He's having his dream season. Next year, I'd be surprised if that continue, no matter what club he's at. So for me, it's a no on Solanki.
Chris, are you the same mindset as Dad, or are you intrigued about the potential deal?
I am intrigued because I'm a little bit confused by the link. Because like Daz, I don't really see Solanki as a big improvement on the squad. And when I talk about the squad, obviously I'm talking about Isak and Wilson. I'm pleased and I'm encouraged by the fact that we are being linked with a forwards, because we've said, haven't we, boys, that we could do with that third striker. So that is positive news for me. But I'm not sure Dominic Solanki is the answer, and I think Daz put it really well there when he said that he's kind of having his Miggy season, because I think this is the best that you will see of Dominic Solanki, and I think he's probably very near to his ceiling, if not already above his ceiling. Like, I don't think he's going to get any better. Ben made some really good points, and I funnily enough, when Ben was talking about it, I was thinking to myself, it's definitely not going to happen in January, because if you're the Bournemouth owner or the Bournemouth manager, it would be absolutely ludicrous to sell your main striker. Especially given that you've got Luton, Sheffield United, Burnley, who are all looking pretty nailed on for relegation, and then if you go and sell your main striker, you're potentially risking your Premier League status, aren't you, by doing that? Bournemouth have made a pretty good start to the season, to be fair, and they've looked okay, but I don't expect them to come in January, and I hope that we don't revisit it in the summer, because as well, I would imagine Bournemouth would probably be looking for 40 million plus for Solanki. And when you look across Europe at what you could get for that price, I just don't think it's good value for money. I really don't.
I'm inclined to agree with that. I can see why Eddie Howe is looking at someone like Dominic Solanki, and I'll bring it up in just a second. But for one, I don't see it happening in January. I just don't. Bournemouth would be absolutely mad to get rid of him in January. They would. He's having a great season, like Daz said. He's rolling with the punches. Why would he then go straight to second choice in a team that aren't guaranteed European football, as what Ben said earlier, and it's absolutely right. However, this told me, this link today, someone came back to me, I think it was Bob, came into one of my comments and said, I think he mentioned something about it not likely to happen, or not being any much of a big deal. And for me, I see this link today beyond Dominic Solanki. It tells me two things. It tells me, one, that Callum Wilson's time at Newcastle United is coming to an end, and that we are actively looking for his replacement. And two, it tells me that there's money to spend, because we wouldn't go in for Dominic Solanki and inquire about potentially taking him if we didn't have the intent of actually going to sign him. So for me, it tells me that there's money to be spent. And we already know, we had Kieran Maguire on the show last Monday, who did say, who's someone that tracks finances for various different clubs, that there is a little bit of money there to play with. And so for me, I was intrigued for those two reasons. And that doesn't mean that deal is going to happen in January. I don't think it will. But I think it's something that we do need to be aware of, in fact, of a deal that could potentially happen. And the reason why I think Eddie Howe is interested in him, and I'm doing a Chris Hall here, is that this is the comparison to Dominic Solanki and Callum Wilson.
Wow.
They are nailed on in their attributes and the way in which they play their game. So it's very clear to me that Dominic Solanki is being looked at, probably not the only player, but he's being looked at as a direct Callum Wilson replacement. Because if you look at the way in which they style up and the way in which they play, they're actually very, very similar. Very, very similar players. And we're not going to get, in my opinion, an Alexander Isak replica. You're not going to go into a new season with two Alexander Isaks that play exactly the same. What you are going to do is get another Callum Wilson that can do his job, because as most big clubs do, they have different type of strikers that can offer something a little bit different. Yeah. And that's my thinking of that. So that was my thinking away from the initial link. Is he going to come? Is he not? I don't think he will. But I think that's been more intriguing to me, and that's what I've looked into since I saw that open up. So it's going to be an interesting one to kind of look at in a little bit more detail. Ben, I don't know if you wanted to add anything to that before we move on.
No, I think you're right. I think that if they're planning for the summer, there will be a budget. So ultimately, regardless of financial fair play, European football or not, it's not unthinkable that Newcastle would have 70, 80, 90 million to spend. Even Manchester United, who were tight, supposedly, for money heading into last summer, had about 120 million to make a couple of signings. So I think regardless of what Newcastle do on the field, 100 odd million or certainly 70, 80 million will be within their budget, because they're a Premier League club. They're likely to obviously finish in the top half, get prize money and so on. So I don't think that a Solanke summer move necessarily gives away the fact that they have money and could spend money now, because budgets are seasonal and you're looking ultimately at next summer and next season and therefore next campaign's budgets. And this is the thing with financial fair play, that unlike profit and sustainability, it's solely cycle based. And if under financial fair play, but also profit and sustainability can be factored in too, which is the Premier League's domestic version of financial fair play, if you're going to stay within it, it's not necessarily so rigid and tight that you can or can't spend a few million in one window. It's more that you budget per season, regardless of per cycle, to try and even it out, because you don't know what eventualities you'll need to plan for. So if Newcastle do just decide to spend now, then it's not that they're going to be immediately in breach of financial fair play. So for the right opportunity, they will spend. It's more that then come next summer or the January or the summer afterwards, they'll eventually have to rein in and not bring in a player that maybe is the right opportunity and is a long-term target. So this is why clubs are conservative. It's basically like having £10 of pocket money and going into the first store and spending £10 with the first thing that you see, and then realizing that that was actually your pocket money for 4 weeks, or in this case, 4 windows. And then you go into the next shop and you're like, oh, I wish I'd have waited. So that's why we hear a lot about Newcastle being tight, because they know they're going to need some money in the summer and it's an easier window to operate in. They know that across next season in January, they may need some money. And they know that the summer after summer 2024, they're going to have to plan as well, all in which they don't guarantee European football. And this is the kind of financial aim, which is dull and boring and pessimistic, versus the football aim, which is ambitious. So Howe is being judged on European football, but Newcastle's budget for the season is based upon a 10th place finish or something around that. It's the same for Brighton. It's the same for West Ham. It might even be the same for Chelsea, believe it or not. And that's not unambitious. That's sensible. You don't budget for what you don't have. So your financial projections, which are inclusive of spend, factor in financial fair play and are highly sensible and pessimistic. And that doesn't mean that the club is pessimistic. What we're saying is that your finance department budget for 10th, because then if Newcastle United don't reach Europe, they're not screwed. And your football department plan for 6th or better, probably 5th or better. And that's obviously because the expectation is that Eddie Howe and Newcastle deliver, but that doesn't mean that the financial department are on the same page. And that's smart and that's sustainable. And it stops you getting in a position where somewhere further down the line, financial ruin happens.
Yeah, it's some great points there, and things that we will definitely need to consider from what Ben's just said for people in the chat as we're approaching the summer window, to think along those lines. That is for sure. I know time's short with you, Ben. There's a couple of players that I want to throw at you really quickly before we maybe get a couple of comments from people in the chat, because people have put lots of comments in the chat, and we really appreciate them taking the time to do so. We talked about other options. Could it be that Saudi is an option that we still haven't explored yet? Is that an area that we could explore? And the reason being is because, interestingly, Ben, you have been writing a number of pieces with regards to this man, Jordan Henderson, and he has been linked with Newcastle United. You've mentioned him, Ben. Luke Edwards had mentioned him on his Transfer Gossip podcast as well, as a player that Newcastle have considered, but not just him. You know, there's another player that's looking to get out of Saudi at the moment as well. And not that he's been linked with Newcastle United, but do you think someone that's looking for a move back to Newcastle, that potentially Bobby Firmino is someone that Newcastle could potentially look at? So a couple of players there. What are your thoughts about both of them, starting with Jordan Henderson?
Well, they're in different positions, because Ittifaq don't want to sell or loan Jordan Henderson. He's going to have to tell them face to face next week if he wants to leave. Otherwise, nothing is going to be possible. But that's a challenge. Whereas Al Ahly are prepared to loan Firmino, so that is easier. But obviously, all these players have gone to Saudi Arabia on high wages, well above Newcastle's maximum earners. So it can be quite disruptive to a dressing room to bring in one player who is maybe earning double. And it isn't only about the numbers you hear. Those numbers are, if they stay for 2 years anyway, tax-free. So Jordan Henderson's not on 700k a week, by the way, but is, I'm told, on 8 million a year, which off the top of my head probably equates to about 160k a week. And that, if you factor in tax-free, even though he has to stay for 2 years, is obviously equivalent to almost 50% more. So you could say that to have Henderson, if you are to pay all of the wages and also compensate for the fact that they're taxable, if he wants to earn what he's earning, and maybe he doesn't, he might be prepared to take a pay cut. He probably will have to take a pay cut. But if he wants like for like, then Newcastle would effectively have to offer him a taxed wage of about 250k a week, which is about 50k more than he was on apparently during his time at Liverpool. And I think that's roughly 100k more than Newcastle's top earner, maybe even a bit more. So this is difficult. And Brighton did it with Ansu Fati, for example. They brought him in. They're paying him an incredibly high wage, but there was no loan fee. Whereas in this case, Al Ittifaq is saying they want a loan fee and they want 100% wage coverage. So the only way Newcastle could make it work is if Henderson halved his wage or more, and then Newcastle were able to negotiate a small loan fee with Al Ittifaq because of the wage cut, and Henderson wanted the move. The links are all being driven by the Henderson camp, and Henderson is leading on this because he's self-negotiating. It was Trent Alexander-Arnold's brother, that did the deal to take him to Saudi Arabia, but now Jordan Henderson, albeit with lots of people also helping and supporting him, is leading on any potential exit. So it is true, to the best of my knowledge, that Henderson would like to leave Saudi Arabia, but whether that's possible depends on Al Ittifaq and the Ministry of Sport. And at the moment, they're a little bit offended, I think, that Henderson's going behind their back, or his camp are anyway, pushing that a move might be possible, linking him with clubs when he's not said a word yet to Al Ittifaq. And that's not the way to do business in that part of the world. You've got to be very respectful. Otherwise, they're just going to block an exit. So I'm told there's a meeting on either Sunday or Monday where Henderson will be presented with the opportunity to either admit directly to the club the stories are true or deny it. And if he denies it, a line will be drawn under it and he'll go nowhere. And if he admits it, then let's wait and see. I think Newcastle is challenging as well. It might be right for Henderson's family, but he ultimately is still Sunderland through and through. So it's not going to go down well to join Newcastle, I think, when you've got the Saudi side, which has caused distaste. You've got the Sunderland links, which will cause distaste. You've got the age, which may cause distaste. And there's no long-term ism about Henderson to Newcastle because he's 33. So it could be a Tonali type stopgap, but then Henderson's going to probably end up not playing regularly come next season if he stayed at Newcastle, or he's going to have to go back to Saudi Arabia on loan. So it feels like it papers over the cracks, but in the long term, it wouldn't help Newcastle financially or practically. It wouldn't help Al Ittifaq if he's on loan, goes back and still wants to leave Saudi Arabia, and it wouldn't help Henderson at his age, but it might help him for the Euros, and it might help Newcastle between now and the end of the season. But there's nothing really advanced at this point. It's all kind of just links and speculation, and he said, she said, without anyone actually talking to the Ministry of Sport. And quite clearly, if Newcastle want to do this deal, they can very easily talk to the Ministry of Sport and to Al Ittifaq, and there's been no conversations yet between PIF and Ittifaq or PIF and the Ministry of Sport. And the Ministry of Sport, by the way, both do these deals along with the clubs, but also the Ministry of Sport are the owners of Al Ittifaq as well. So they have two kinds of involvement in all of this. And PIF are never going to go behind the back. So if Newcastle wanted this, they would have to be very upfront, hold a conversation, and they haven't at this point, and they may not. I think Ajax is a more realistic possibility. With Firmino, it's a bit different because, as I said before, the actual club want him out because he's not a fit for their system and he's not enjoying his football under the manager. And then they want to bring him back in the summer. So that actually might be easier to pull off. And I think it would make a lot of sense, to be perfectly honest with you. I think that he'd be a brilliant signing for Newcastle. It would allow Joe Linton to be the midfielder that Newcastle need. Firmino plays in the front line. And then I think you're covered between now and the end of the season. He's a fantastic character and it's low risk. It's maybe high risk financially because you're covering a large portion of the wages. But again, he'd have to take a pay cut. It's as simple as that. The other thing is Al Ahly might pay some of the wages, probably only a third, but Al Ahly are prepared to contribute to the wages. Al Ittifaq aren't with Henderson. So there are two players that could leave in slightly different positions, practically and financially. I think with Henderson, I'd be surprised if he ended up at Newcastle. With Firmino, I've not seen Newcastle linked. I've not heard Newcastle are linked, but I'm surprised that Newcastle aren't utilising the fact that they have the connection with PIF. You have a club that wants Firmino out, and you have Newcastle who need a creative-minded player. And even if midfield appears the priority, bring in Firmino, put Joe Linton in midfield, and as I say, you're okay until the end of the season. So you're all over Firmino, but unfortunately for those in favour of that move, I'm not aware that Newcastle have made an approach.
One to keep an eye on. Hey, it won't be the worst thing adding another Brazilian to the squad. That's for sure. Boys, I get your thoughts on that. I know Ben's got to go in like literally seconds. If we've got like a question, a quick fire question or two to
we have loads of questions, but I'll go to the Dan Ashworth one that you were talking about. What that was being discussed with Fabrizio Romano. Do you think Dan Ashworth will end up at Man United, Ben?
It's not guaranteed. I mean, Ashworth did an interview, I think it was in November, saying he's happy at Newcastle, and people are making a connection between, in particular, Sir Dave Brailsford and Dan Ashworth. They're very close friends. And whose head isn't going to be turned by a brand new project at a club like Manchester United? In the same way that Ashworth's head was turned by an exciting new project at Newcastle from Brighton. But At Newcastle, he's got sort of carte blanche and control. At Manchester United, he would need to understand the infrastructure and the plans. So no approach has been made to Ashworth yet. I do think he's high on the list of Ineos targets. And I also think that Ineos will go for 2, not 1. I believe they'll employ a sporting director, of which Ashworth is strongly under consideration, and a sort of either head of recruitment or technical director. The titles are not that important, but then it allows them to, for example, try for Paul Mitchell as well. But it's like a merry-go-round in many ways, because Mitchell wants to be a sporting director. So he might be tempted to work under Ashworth. But by the same token, it's not unthinkable that Ashworth goes to Manchester United and then a free agent like Mitchell is considered for Newcastle. So this is the sort of unpredictability of the merry-go-round. I firmly believe that this will be resolved in more like February, March, with a view to the summer or beyond, because there could even be a clause in Ashworth's contract that puts him on gardening leave. You may remember that it was all done between Brighton and Newcastle, and he still couldn't join. So every contract's different, but Newcastle want to protect themselves. So this isn't going to be something we learn any news on in January. Ashworth's working for Newcastle. He's happy with Newcastle. He's got freedom with Newcastle. It's an if, not a when. I think that it's probably a when Manchester United come calling, because they absolutely, in my opinion, will ask permission to at least speak to Ashworth as a prospective candidate. But it's an if, should he leave. And this is, again, why Newcastle need to try and get themselves into European football, because by the time the actual meat and bones of real conversations to progress this with a view to the summer materialise, if Newcastle are top 5 or top 4 and Manchester United aren't, then Ashworth will probably turn around and say, our project's moving in the right direction, Manchester United's a risk. But if Newcastle are 10th in the table and Ineos have done a strategic review and are promising the world and are allowing the candidate for sporting director to lead on the project and have freedom, then it's a possibility. But it's not just Ashworth. Julian Ward will be under strong consideration as well. So I think it's about fit. And Ashworth's got no idea yet. People assume because he knows Brailsford, he knows what's coming. He knows he's almost the front runner. He knows the structure. None of that's been decided yet. Ineos are doing a strategic review led by Brailsford. They'll then determine the structure they want. They'll then determine the recruitment hires they need. Then they'll go to market. And I think that will happen in March, April, which is why, again, if there's any kind of clause that stops Ashworth from joining, then he may not even be able to impact anything potentially until January 2025. Versus maybe a Newcastle at that time that are top 4, top 5, everything's moving in the right direction. And it's not like Manchester United can offer too much more of a budget, because they're a bit constrained by financial fair play as well. So there's a lot of ifs and buts. And at this stage, all I can say, even though one's a bit of good news and one's a bit of bad news, is the bad news, Ineos do really like Ashworth, and I fully expect them to at least talk to him along with at least 3 other candidates, including Julian Ward. And I think we can say that he's one of the favourites. The good news is there's been no approach yet made, and Ashworth is very happy at Newcastle United. So he's going to have a big decision to make. And I don't think anyone other than Ashworth at this stage can tell you how this one is going to play out, because it's too early in the series of permutations that might happen before we know. And Ashworth's head's not turned yet. It's not distracted yet. Newcastle are not worried yet. They're not looking at other options yet. All that will come only after January. So we are just going to have to be a bit patient with this one. But there's absolutely no guarantee that Ashworth will leave, because he's got so much control and freedom and respect at Newcastle that as long as the project is moving in the right direction, why take the risk of going to Manchester United, big club, big brand and all of that? But you could find it doesn't work, and then you actually take a personal career step backwards. Whereas right now, Ashworth is flying, is one of the most highly rated sporting directors in the game, is settled personally and professionally, is well paid. And if Newcastle can get European football in back-to-back seasons in the next few years, then this won't be an FFP conversation. This won't be a do we have to be conservative conversation. That's when PIF's flex will really start to show. And I think Ashworth knows that this is only the start of Newcastle. The Champions League qualification was not the end, and therefore going out of the Champions League was not a sort of flat finale to an upturn in form that saw Newcastle succeed and then somehow end in mediocrity. The Champions League qualification was 2-3 years ahead of what the project was planning, which means if Newcastle can kind of solidify then we've only seen the start of the project. We've only seen the tip of the iceberg. And I think if you're Ashworth and you know that, it could be quite foolish to leave Newcastle now, because the real period of sustained success that he can dine off and contribute and lead and make part of his legacy is maybe still to come in the next 3, 4, 5 seasons. Because remember one key point in all of this: when Newcastle's new ownership came in and Newcastle were staving off relegation, it was made clear by everybody that this sustained Champions League qualification and these potential challenges for titles and these marquee signings and all of the wealth that everyone attributed to Newcastle on day one, and all of the wealth that people said with a Chris Wood style signing, who was about the most expensive that they brought in, or I think the most overvalued player that they brought in. All of that at that time was billed as Newcastle are rash. Newcastle are just going to spend. And they didn't because they're ahead of their plan. So the best is yet to come in terms of finances spent, in terms of planning, in terms of goals. It's just the fact that they got to Champions League so quickly that now they're being judged by it. And that's unfortunate. They're sort of victims of their own success in the media, because now it's a crisis when they're not challenging for the Premier League, because Yasser Al-Rumayyan said in the offseason, why can't we go on and win the Premier League, when he did his interview with the club? So they've set the bar so high, but the project steps are much lower in terms of where the bar is. And Ashworth, more than anybody, knows that, which is why I think there's a possibility, even if Manchester United come calling, he might turn it down.
No. Great answer, Ben. Great answer. I know you have to go, so I just want a one-name answer here to this question. If you were a Newcastle fan, you sometimes are, who would you like for us to bring in this January, considering FFP restrictions, I suppose?
Well, I would be trying for Andre Santos on loan, because I think he's a great character and could slot into that midfield. But the challenge is Newcastle would probably not start him every game, and Chelsea need a loan that's going to have him playing every week. Had it not transpired like it did at Forest and he'd have stayed at the squad and then realised in January he needed a loan, it would be a little bit different. But now if Santos is loaned, it's going to be somewhere that can guarantee playing time every single week. And I don't think Newcastle is the right fit from Chelsea's perspective, but I do think Santos is the right fit from Newcastle's perspective. So I would be all over him. I also think if FFP was not a concern, I would be all over Conor Gallagher, because I think that he's been one of the best performers for Chelsea. And I think that if the price wasn't all in, including bonuses, 55, 60 million, if it was more like 30, 35 million, if I was Newcastle, I'd be all over Conor Gallagher, because he's playing well. He might get in the England squad. He shows passion. He gets box to box. He gets stuck in. He creates chances. Even though he's not necessarily like a natural leader, he's had the captain's armbands. There's clearly some developing leadership there. But again, price makes it impossible. Chelsea are not loaning. Gallagher's not really like for sale in the sense Chelsea are offering him out. Gallagher's for sale in the sense if someone comes with an offer that's too good to turn down, Chelsea's head will be turned. If nobody comes, then he'll stay. He's not like on a transfer list or anything like that. But I do think that if FFP was not an issue and Newcastle were just to get a player, then I would suggest Gallagher. So I'm basically saying go and raid Chelsea like they did for Lewis Hall. But there's some fantastic bits of business. I mean, if you think at who Chelsea let go, Kovacic, really useful to Manchester City. Mason Mount, when fit, could be really useful to Manchester United. Kai Havertz, much maligned, but he can play almost anywhere. I mean, he's been playing left back for the German national team. Massive amount of money, so he gets derided. But I still think he can do a job for Arsenal in the second half of the season. Conor Gallagher, if he goes, incredibly useful. Trevor Chalobah, centre-back, if he goes, incredibly useful. Mark Cucurella nearly went on loan to Manchester United. Incredibly useful. Chelsea have got a range of players that they've let go. Christian Pulisic doing really well at the moment at Milan. I don't think any of these are flops. Chelsea may say they got high standards, they got young players coming in. And N'Golo Kante went to Saudi Arabia. I think every single club right now in the Premier League, including Newcastle, if they could get N'Golo Kante, would take N'Golo Kante at least between now and the end of the season or on a short-term contract. So I feel like there are opportunities within Chelsea because of the size of their squad and because of their form and maybe a lack of European football. And if money wasn't an object, if I was Newcastle, I would be all over Conor Gallagher.
Great stuff. Great stuff. Ben, look, we I know Dad's got so many more questions he could ask.
Oh, yeah, million questions.
You've taken so much of your time out to come and join us. We massively appreciate it. So we're going to let you go. Where can people find you just before you head off?
TalkSport Broadcasting. Some of you will see me on there. Premier League commentaries. I've got a couple of Newcastle games coming up, but this weekend I will be doing Manchester United Spurs game. And obviously on Twitter at JacobsBen, or not Twitter, X now as it is known, and Instagram, TikTok, Ben David Jacobs.
Excellent. Ben,
Brilliant.
Always a pleasure. Hopefully we can get you on again soon, later on down the line. But until then, massive thanks for you joining us, and look, have a fantastic evening. We'll let you head off.
All the best, everyone. Great to catch up. Keep up the good work. We'll speak soon.
Take care.
Thanks,
Ben.
See you
Take
later.
care.
See you guys.
Great to have Ben on. A fantastic guest and great opinions as well. And look, well sourced. We've been working with Ben with regards to the channel for a long time now, for years, in fact, and he is well sourced on all things Newcastle United. So a good perspective to have. But we're not done. No. We are not done. Not yet. We are waiting for Traitors to be released so we can watch it tonight.
We are.
If anyone's not a Traitors fan, you're missing out. So you will be watching that later on tonight. But we've got transfers to still talk about, boys. And I have to say, go on, Dad. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, no, because I will forget it otherwise. We also have a members draw to do. So shall we do that first? And we also want to get to the about 25 questions in the chat as well. Some were for Ben, but maybe we can try and tackle them too. So maybe we'll do the draw first and then get back into the transfers.
I've got some questions. And people in the chat, there's still transfer talk going on, and there's still links here that we've got that we haven't brought up yet that I want to get your opinions on. So let's get to the members draw. Let's go for it.
Let's go for it. All right, I'll make this wheel a bit bigger. 1 second. Yeah, so we've got 116 members in the draw. What's the prize, Chris?
So the prize is going to be a Newcastle United Club Store voucher. So we're going to give away a Newcastle United Club Store voucher to the value of, what should we say, boys? £50?
Yeah.
Sounds good.
You happy with £50? Brilliant.
Get it on.
So let's do a Newcastle United Club Store voucher for £50. Daz, spin that wheel.
I should have really consulted with you beforehand. Someday you're going to give away a car, Chris. I just know it. Here we go.
Mate, I'd love to give away a car. How about?
I was about to say get the rave on, but yeah, that was at the weekend.
George Hayes. Congratulations, George.
Congratulations, George. Brilliant stuff.
Congratulations. So you can, George, I'll stop sharing this. You can reach out to any of us or DM the loaded side or get in contact with us any way you can. And we'll give you 1 week. So on the 17th of January to get in contact with us. And then Chris will get those details out to you for your £50 club voucher. So nice one. Back to the show. Back to all the action, Pete.
Definitely. Just really interesting our conversations around various different things. But look, because we knew that we had Ben for such a short period of time, I didn't get a chance to ask you boys on a few things, but I will ask you on a few of those things now. Look, but what I will say very quickly, we've had way over 300 in the chat tonight watching this show tonight. Thank you for tuning in. If you haven't already, just click that like for us. And if you're new to the channel, click that subscribe button. Come and join the Loaded Mag NUFC. Shows like this are going to be a regular over the course of this month and beyond. So make sure that you are a subscriber to the channel. Give this a like to get all the algorithms and all the good stuff out there. And if you're new to the channel, pass it on to a friend. Let them know about the channel and what you watch, and get them to come and subscribe as well. But boys,
that's a good point, Pete, because I started something here that links into that. It's from GK. He says, I don't understand how there are not 5 times the amount of number of subscribers to this channel. Consistent quality content and guests. Thanks very much, GK, for that first. Well, you watching right now, or you you can help us. You can share this channel. You can share the link wide and far on all your socials, and tell them about the show. Tell them to come and subscribe, or give it a watch and make their own mind up. So we rely on you to help us grow this channel. We are popular in a range of different countries. We were looking at the countries the other day, and we're very surprised. Even this month alone, we've been popular in Nigeria, and why? There's not many places in the world we haven't touched, but we can become more popular. But we need your help to grow the channel. So please help us by sharing and getting your friends involved.
Definitely. Tell a friend to tell a friend is what we like to say, and it spreads the message far and wide. So let's make sure that we do that. But boys, I'm going to come back to this man. Where are we? Yeah, this man, Dominic Solanki. We had this conversation. We don't believe it's going to happen in January as a 3, and Ben Jacobs is in agreement with us. But is it interesting to you? The comparisons there between those players. I know your reactions to that, boys, told me that you were surprised by that. Do you think that's maybe in part of Eddie Howe's mind? And I mentioned the fact that I thought it might well be the long goodbye for this man, Callum Wilson, as much as I love him. What are your boys' thoughts on that? About the whole link, not about whether he's going to sign in January, but the link in general. What are your boys' thoughts about that? And Dad, I'll start with you on that.
Yeah, well, everyone knows now already my thoughts on the link and the player. So, but I'm just on that picture alone, that diamond. I think we need to look. Never mind the box. Look outside that diamond, because we should be looking for someone better than Callum Wilson. Solanki, I would have questioned the signing back in the Mike Ashley days. With Howe as manager, if Howe had brought in, Ashley had brought in Howe. So and I know he's had a good season, but it's not for me, not where we need to be looking and go for it. I'd rather save the money and invest it later on if that's the case. It doesn't make sense to me for what the project that we're trying to run with here. And he's no spring chicken either. He's 26, going to be 27. So he's not ticking any box for you apart from that he's English box that Eddie Howe seems to like.
Chris, you were nodding away and kind of shocked when you saw those comparisons.
Yeah.
Do you think it is the long goodbye, as I said, with regards to Callum Wilson? Now you see those sort of comparisons. Are we actively, in your mind, looking for that replacement for him?
Yeah, I think it's a really good point that you made, Pete. And obviously, SofaScore's kind of backed that up. And it's funny because when I saw the links with Dominic Solanki earlier today, when you boys posted it, I'm not completely shocked by it. Take away the side that Eddie Howe signed him for Bournemouth, and take away the fact that us boys have been saying that we need a striker. It doesn't surprise me that Eddie Howe is interested in someone like Dominic Solanki, because he's kind of, as Daz rightly said, I think we should be looking for an upgrade on Callum Wilson, and I don't think Dominic Solanki is an upgrade on Callum Wilson, but he's probably a better version of like a Chris Wood, isn't he? He's got something else to his game, and I think he's a player who offers you an alternative. But I just don't think that he himself is the guy. I do agree with Daz on that. But yeah, it could be that he is the long-term solution for Callum Wilson in terms of bringing in another striker to challenge Alexander Isak. I think for me, yes, Dominic Solanki's had a good season, and yes, he's looked decent. And I'm not saying that he's not a good player, but when you start thinking about the price tag, I know a specific price tag hasn't been mentioned, but if you're bringing in a new striker, I'm looking at like a prospect. I mean, we got linked ages ago, didn't we, with Armando Broja from Chelsea? Somebody in that ilk, I think, for me, someone who's got a bit of progression in them, someone who you could probably get for a more reasonable price, and someone who's got a far higher ceiling. That's the kind of player I'd be looking at. Not necessarily Broja, but someone in that mould. We've spoken about the fact that Solanki's 27. Again, is he a great age? We do love to talk 26.
About that. He's 26. For me, I don't get this. Like, there's people in the chat put it in earlier when I think Ben Jacobs talked about the fact he's 26. Someone put in the chat, and I can't remember who, said 26, not a great age. It's a great age.
It's
not the perfect age.
It's not the perfect age.
But it's a great age.
It's still a great age. It's still a great age.
If it was a different player, maybe it's a great, it's
maybe.
a fine age. But not having it.
A fine age.
Like to me, it's what is it, someone mentioned Chris Wood. It's of that ilk. It's like we brought in Chris Wood. He did a job for us when we needed. And then we wanted rid. I don't see the logic behind bringing him in. Is it like to try and get us into Europe? Then we try and offload him again? No, not for me. Anywhere I look at this, I and I know it's only a story, and it may, the journalist might be good and blah blah blah, but I don't want to.
To be fair, Daz,
anywhere near him.
That's a fantastic point you've made there, Daz. Because let's say we're 2 or 3 years away from where we want to be. So if we've then got a 29-year-old Dominic Solanki starting up front for us in the Champions League, is that kind of where we see ourselves? Is that yeah, exactly.
We won't be there in the Champions League with them.
No, I think that's fair to say. Maybe we're being a bit harsh on Solanki. I don't know, but and like I say, I'm not taking anything away from what he's done this season. Like he has looked good. He's looked far better. Yeah, he has. I kind of put him in the same bracket, and maybe I'm being harsh because my mates call me out for this all the time, but I kind of put him in the same bracket as Ollie Watkins. Like if we were getting linked with Ollie Watkins, I'd be saying roughly the same thing. Some people will say, and in the chat, if you disagree with me, some people will say that Ollie Watkins is far better than Dominic Solanki, and I wouldn't disagree with that. But I still don't think someone like him is the answer. I would much rather bring in someone, 2 or 3 years younger, who's maybe say 23, 24, who's got room to grow, room to develop, and where you think, oh my God, where's he going to be in 4 or 5 years' time? I don't really see that with Solanki or someone like Watkins.
Yeah, you don't really ever see them as the top tier, do you? Even with Watkins is having a pretty good season.
Yeah,
but even then, Callum Wilson's still talked about ahead of him. Isak's way above him, in my opinion. And so many other players, like even Bowen, he's not even a striker, but he's playing there and scoring goals. Even he's considered above those guys, and that's the thing. Like they're good players with the potential to get there, but are not there. And like you said, they're kind of, if they were 21, 22, it's a different conversation. But I do get what you're saying. Like I see for me, where Dominic Solanki is now is where he should have been 3 years ago, in my opinion. And if that was the case, you're having a different conversation there because you can see the growth. But he's approaching his peak now and only just really kicking into gear. And that's not the worst thing in the world. But again, we're looking at a different stratosphere in terms of where we want to go.
And for the price you're going to pay, Pete, let's be honest. If we wanted to get Solanki, as I say, it's going to be minimum 40 million. If we wanted Ollie Watkins, you're probably talking 60, 70 million. And are you really going to fork out that for a player who's, reaching the peak of his years? You're right, 20, 27, 28. That's kind of when you want your striker. But how, like, for example, Ollie Watkins, I know we keep talking about Ollie Watkins, but how many years has he been at Villa? He got that big move from Brentford, didn't he? And it's only now that we're going, oh, yeah, Ollie Watkins, oh, yeah, decent player. Yeah. The last 2 or 3 seasons, nobody's talked about Ollie Watkins. Nobody.
Yeah. Even now, like, he only just gets into England, doesn't he? So sorry, guys, what were you going to say?
I guess the way I'm coming at this is that I'm the money that's been spent on players, it doesn't belong to us, right? But I'm very protective of the money we spend because of FFP. It'd be grand, sign him, sign Solanki, sign this, that, and the other. If it was money, was no options. There was no such thing as FFP. Then bring him in. I don't care if we can play the other 4 strikers, 5 strikers, 6 strikers we have in the squad if that's the case. But because we have to be very cautious of everything we do. Like I'm even thinking back on the Barnes signing. Okay, it was very unfortunate that he got injured, and hopefully he has a brilliant second half of the season. But was that the right move? Blah blah blah. And I don't want to be shooting ourselves in the foot by spending money on players that I don't believe in for this project. So and everyone's the same because everyone knows how tight the whole FFP budget thing is.
Definitely.
Can I just steal the chat 1 second? Because somebody's
Yeah.
just put a comment in there, and I'm like, yeah, do you know what? I think Toon Gamer it hits the nail on the head in terms of what we're discussing. The only two strikers we should look at and save for is Evan Ferguson and Benjamin Sesko. And when you're talking about those two players, particularly just because Toon Gamers brought them up, you know, you look at the age of them, and they're only just like they've only just come to prominence. They're at the beginning of their career, and look where they are. So you're thinking in 3 or 4 years' time, where are those two players going to be? There's a possibility that they're going to be way and above where Ollie Watkins is, where Chris Wood would be, where Dominic Solanki even. The ceiling's far higher, and they're the kind of players I think we should look to bring in and develop and try and lift the game.
And if it didn't work out for either of those two options there, Sesko or Ferguson, look at you can sell them on. You're not like waiting 3 years down the line and then they're 29, 30, and it's more difficult to try and offload them then, or else they're running down their contract and looking for that last big payday. So it doesn't have to be those two strikers, but someone of that ilk, or slightly older as well. But go on.
You just said someone slightly older. We've been looking at a particular area, an area that Zach Lowry knows quite well, and there has been links with this man, Victor Gyokeres. There's reports now, a number of reports that Newcastle were at the game over the weekend to look at sporting players, and we were talking about various players that we could have been looking at. Diamand, as well as Gyokeres. There was Inacio, who we didn't even mention on the show yesterday, but is a player that's been linked with Newcastle United before in the summer. But it says on there, HITC, I understand that one of those that Newcastle was looking at is Victor Gyokeres, 25 years old, came from Coventry to Sporting, tearing it up this season. If we are looking at a little bit older, okay, 25, good age. It's younger than Solanki, that's for sure. That maybe is a potential player, and it says in there that's really interesting that he's got a release clause of less than sort of 50 million euros. They're looking at the sort of 42 million pound. Some people have said it's higher, but a lot of people have mentioned that he's got a release clause of that. Is that the type of striker that you would look for and wait for and kind of save your money for to get in if he continues this vein of form into the second half of the season?
I haven't seen that much of him at Sporting. I saw a bit of him at Coventry, and I was surprised a Premier League club didn't go in for him then. I didn't take a chance on him. And it's all about, I think we do have to take a chance on someone. But who is the question? But yeah, I was surprised that the release. I've been led to believe from different things as well that the release cost was like twice that price, and it was like forget it then kind of thing. So he comes into the reckoning then if it's at those kind of prices.
Definitely. JB just put his release clause is 38 million. I've got no idea. It was only just in that report. It said 42 million, but if it's 38 million, Jesus, that's even better. Why not get that deal done? But let's not forget, Graham Bailey said on the show that we had with him last week that there's a potential that Benjamin Sesko could go on loan. Why not look at that deal? And it begs the question. I'll come to you, Chris, on that way. It begs the question, are we kind of trying to keep our powder dry with signings to wait until later on in the window for these type of deals to potentially come available? Whereas if you're patient enough, you could get a cracking deal for somebody.
Yeah, I mean, we briefly touched on it yesterday, didn't we? After the show with Zach Lowy yesterday, and if you haven't watched that, do make sure you do. It was a really good show. Fantastic hosting.
I love it.
Look at it. I love it. No, I think you're absolutely right, Pete. In that, I was trying to give a straight face for that.
You did as well.
I didn't see that coming.
No, I wondered if he was a crack or not. But no, I think that's exactly it. And then I brought out my after Zach had gone, I brought out my weird example with the whole police drama thing, didn't I? When I was saying I could imagine that there'd be loads of players kind of on a board, and I think that we've got a whole host of players that we're potentially looking at, and there'll be certain deals that I think, you know, the club will have contacted the clubs, contacted the players, first of all to see if the player's interested, second of all to see if they can do the deal with the club. But I don't think it's a case of let's go out and do a deal with a club, get the deal done, signed, sealed, delivered. I think there's probably a lot of inquiries going on, as in like, okay, well, how much would he be? A bit like what we've seen with Solanki. It could be that the club have approached Bournemouth and said, listen, how much are we talking? And Bournemouth have gone, no, not interested, come back in the summer. I mean, who knows? We're just speculating. But I do think I totally agree with what you said, Pete, and that, you know, there's probably been a lot of inquiries made. Clubs are all shifting around, waiting for things to move. It's a bit like a massive game of chess where, you know, or a domino effect where something happens and then all of a sudden a player becomes available who 2 weeks ago was not available. And clubs are trying to move people on and shift people on so that they can make their moves for players that they're after. So I think there is potential for us to see a lot of movement towards the back end of the window. And maybe there is a little bit of truth in what Eddie House says, and that, you know, the club are currently keeping the powder dry and they're not currently in discussions with players or looking at particular players, because maybe we're not looking for players because we've already looked for them and we know who we want, and we're just sitting here, sitting tight, waiting because we know exactly who we want, and also we're open to, you know, opportunities that may land on our door. And that I've spoken about it before, and that's why exactly what I think happens with Alexander Isak. I think Alexander Isak was high on the list, and then all of a sudden, you know, a call was made or contact was made, and they've gone, listen, you know, we might be interested in that deal. We've then revisited it and gone, yeah, Sam, let's get it done. I do think there's a whole host of players that we've already looked at, or where we've told the club that we're interested, and things do change. And I do think that if the right deal can be done, we'll be interested and we'll do the deal. And then we'll worry about the financials a bit further down the line.
Gyokeres is a Swedish international as well, so he'll know Alexander Isak through this as well anyway. So imagine having a couple of Swedish badasses tearing up
Swedish house mafia. I like it.
Yeah, there you go. You've got it now down already. You've got the tagline sorted. That is unreal. Sky, you better pattern that, because Sky will be on that if we manage
I want to be taken on me.
We've got it now down. Just a couple of players to throw your way before we come to the questions from the chat. This was an interesting one, and not sure what you guys make of this one. I'll come to you, Daz, first on this. Is that Andreas Christensen of Barcelona is apparently mentioned by Mundo Deportivo as an option for Newcastle United. There is continuing rumours that Barcelona financially are struggling. They're looking at moving players out in order to raise funds or to keep funds available for certain other players that they're looking at. And Christensen seems to be that person. He had a really good end of his spell at Chelsea before he went on a free to Barcelona, and he was probably arguably their best centre-back, and they didn't want him to leave by the end of that. I've got to be honest, though, I've not really kept in touch with what he's done at Barcelona, so I don't know how well he's been doing over there. But Christensen, an experienced centre-back, has been good in his day. Would he be a good sort of makeshift to bring in as an alternative, to see out the season?
No, he's a good player. I did always rate him at Chelsea. If he's gone there in a free, he would have got good wages to go to Barcelona. So what is he on? And then what is the price Barcelona would look for him? You know, they're always in financial trouble, and they still miraculously get over it. Their deals that they do. He's a good option for sure. I'd rather go for the Diamante guy from Sporting Lisbon, or the Silva guy from Benfica, or someone younger, and then like we've extended Char's contract, so like Char, buying them for that crazy money, they'll expect to start as well. So it'll be kind of rotating with Char as well. But I can't see that one happening though. It depends on the fee that's been discussed. But I don't think a centre back is what we need for January. The summer, yes, target that area, but not for January. I think we're good with Lascelles as backup. I know people have put it in the chat as well as one of the questions about there was a rumor about Lascelles to Turkey or something as well. So if Lascelles was to move, then you'd think they might be bringing in someone else then. But apart from that, no, I can't see it happening in January.
I wasn't going to come to it yet, but I'll come to it now because you mentioned it, Daz, and I think it's a really interesting point. Is that there has been rumours of, let's go back a month. There was rumours that Jacob Murphy could be on his way to the likes of Nottingham Forest and various other teams in January. We've talked internally and on shows about, could they potentially cash in on someone like Miguel Almiron and send him off to Saudi in January. Then you hear the links of Jamal Lascelles going. He's got 6 months left on his contract. There's 7 other players now away from Shaw because he signed a new deal that are out of contract in the summer. And there has been rumours that there is 1 or 2 fringe players that Newcastle United are looking to sell in order to raise some funds and maybe a position in the squad. Do you see that happening? Do you see that happening with potential to bring in someone like Christensen or just in general? Do you see a couple of fringe players moving out before the end of this month?
I think if it is, it's a domino effect. We'll let someone go to bring someone else in, and I don't know who. Look at behind me, and on the poster we Sean Longstaff, because Sean Longstaff was listed as being a potential to being kind of offered or to be open to looking at offers towards them. And we do need to sell. We do need to be able to trade. So I think I wouldn't mind us selling someone to keep the money. Even if we didn't invest it in January, that would mean that we're going big in the summer, knowing that will happen. But I don't know. Eddie Howe will be reluctant to let someone go that are not in one of his core group to go. I think in January.
Yeah, you're the same mindset, Chris, with regards to that potential fringe players out. Do you see a player or two leaving on the fringe to maybe raise some funds for the end of this month?
Yeah, I think so. Again, I think we touched on it briefly yesterday, but when I was talking about stellar signings or stellar players, if you like, and your likes of your Isaacs, your Botmans, and Bruno's, they would cost an incredible amount of money for us to even consider letting them go. And really, we're trying to build the team around those players. But for me, I would be encouraged if we were to raise some funds via fringe players. Sean Longstaff, as an example, he's a player who, obviously Geordie, local lad, and I think he's a player that I'd certainly like to keep around the club. Don't get me wrong, but as we know, boys, money talks. And if someone was to come in with, say, 30-40 million for Sean Longstaff, I think the club take it seriously. There'll be other players who are further down the pecking order, the likes of your Jacob Murphys. I know, Pete, you were talking about us maybe getting rid of Miggy Almiron, and you could see Jacob Murphy staying as the understudy. But again, if someone slaps 20-25 million down on the table, I think it changes things. It sounds like a lot of money, I know, but I think we paid about 13-14 million for Jacob Murphy. So I do think, if a serious offer came in, I think there was rumours of Palace coming in for him at one point. And he's signed a contract. He's got quite a few years left on his deal, Jacob Murphy. But somebody like that, a player who you don't necessarily think, oh, let's get rid of him. But as soon as those funds become available, or a club come in and say they're interested in them, I think there's a real possibility. And to go back to what Daz said before, Jamal Lascelles, if a club was to come in for, say, an offer for Jamal Lascelles, that's when you could see a loan deal happening for someone like Christensen, where we go, do you know what? Make a few quid selling Jamal Lascelles, bring in a stopgap like Christensen, There could be an option in there to sign him permanently if he did well. Obviously, he's got Premier League experience. And then in the summer, that's when you go big and you go, right, let's bring in a proper right centre-back to challenge Fabian Schär, who's in the last year of his deal, having just signed a new deal. So I think there's loads of moving parts. There'll be. You could argue that most players will have a value on the head. Some players will have a ridiculous value on the head, where you think, no, we probably, we're not looking to sell that player, and we don't want to sell that player. But there'll be a lot of players who have like a value, and as soon as that value is met, or even if it's just below that value, the club will end up having a bit of a discussion and saying, listen, if we sell this player for X amount, that gives us the opportunity to go out and upgrade or buy a player in this position that we really need to upgrade on. So I think what I'm trying to say is I think every player's got his price. However, there will be a clutch of players where we go, you know what, unless it's a silly offer, we're not interested. But as for everybody else, I think that, if the right offer came in, the club would be interested.
Definitely. I'm fixated now on that Swedish House Mafia, Daz.
Yeah, this one here. When I saw this, yeah.
They just added really Manasseh to it, and I'm like, we got to get this done.
Emil Kraft, don't forget it.
Emil Kraft, oh my God.
We could have that.
The Swedish House Mafia. Yes.
The possibilities are endless there. Abitunes.
That's for sure. That is absolutely class. But just talking about the fringe players, Kendo made a point as well. A little bit down the chat, Daz. I know you're working down it because there's been so many comments tonight. Fantastic questions and comments. It's been fantastic to read them all coming in. Kendo said, can we sell Fraser to Sunderland for 40 million? Obviously, Sunderland haven't got 40 million, that's for sure. But actually, what's interesting about that is Ryan Fraser had an interview today that came out in an article, and he was quite open and honest and said his time at Newcastle United is done. His only mindset now is to basically earn a permanent move to Southampton. He wants to move. He wants to stay at Southampton. I wouldn't be surprised if the fringe players that they're referring to in the report is Ryan Fraser, maybe making his move permanent and then sorting out a fee for him. I've got to be honest, I've watched a little bit of Southampton. One of my good friends who I used to work with is a Southampton fan. He wasn't happy with the move to Ryan Fraser initially. He absolutely loves him now. He has been playing some really good stuff there. And he's been a catalyst for them making the bounce right up the table, and will probably be a big reason why they get promoted. And fair play to him. Didn't work out for Newcastle United. He's never shat on us. He's never talked bad about us. He's never said anything negative about us or the manager or the players. He's just been of the realization that he knew his time was done, and so he's kicked on. And if he gets that move and we get a decent fee for him, fair enough. And who's to say if that fee doesn't get done in January, that fee is enough to pay for the likes of Kalvin Phillips' loan, or maybe something else that brings that money in, even if it's a deal of 7-8 million fee to make it permanent. Great, because that covers Kalvin Phillips' loan fee, and then sort of jobs are good in. You haven't lost anything there. You've kind of gained because you had a player that was in the under 21s that is now earned you enough money to get an England international into the club. So who's to say that couldn't happen as well? But last one for me, and I didn't bring this up with Ben Jacobs because we didn't have time. It was only if we had time. And it's not to say that he's linked, but I would love him to be an option because nobody can seem to get this deal done at the moment. And it's Andre. Andre has been linked with Liverpool. It looked like it was a done deal. He then was linked with Fulham. It looked like that was a done deal, but then the deal with João Palhinha to Bayern Munich doesn't seem to be happening right now. So everything's up in the air. He looked like he was waving goodbye and moving on from South America and coming over to Europe and England in particular. He could be the defensive midfielder that we're crying out for. He was one of the best performers over there. And I don't know. I don't know what's happening with him. It wasn't a direct link to Newcastle United, but I've been keeping an eye on Andre and his movements and looking at these movements with Fulham, and his movements with Fulham seem to be dwindling Liverpool seem to be well out the race. They look odds on to sign him, and they were excited about getting him in, that defensive midfielder. That's gone away now. That was just a player that I just wanted to bring to the table because, he could have the potential to come in and really do a job, bringing in the Brazilian contingent. Brazilian House Mafia doesn't quite have the same ring, but
hey, the same colours.
We can find a way of making it work. Or I say we, but Dad can find a way of making it work. But that was just a player
Brazilian.
That I just bring in.
A Brazilian ABBA song, a remix. I like it. But yeah, no. Look, I haven't really seen Andre play, but my Brazilian Twitter, my South American contingent on Twitter, who we had a bit of a conversation with, that conversation carried on. Foxy and Brazil Kane is in that, and I know they're recommending Andre for Newcastle. So if they like him, I'm sure I would like him. So it would be a yes from me then on that one.
Definitely. Chris, I know you'd be the same mindset if we brought him in, just because I'll be honest, I've not seen a lot of him, but there is so much potential that so many people are talking about, that this guy has got the potential to go right to the top of the game. It just goes. I don't know about you boys, but it frustrates me. I don't know if you've seen this in the news, like sort of Sky Sports News. Brighton have agreed a deal with Valentin Bacco, a young Argentinian left back who can play left wing, for 10 million. And he has the potential to be like the next big thing for Argentina. And he's leaving for 10 million. Like now, I've seen a number of clips of him, never been able to watch him live. So I'm not talking of any sort of like kind of connoisseur of South American football. I'm not. Foxy's in the chat. He'll be able to tell us everything we need to know. But this guy has massive potential. And he's going to Brighton for 10 million pounds, I imagine, or euros, whatever it is. It's cheap as chips. And he is meant to be the next big thing. And it frustrates me that yes, we've got Lewis Hall, but why not go in for 10 million euros and get someone like him and have both? Why not have the best of both worlds of that? Dan Burn is 32, going to be 33 soon. Like, we need to look for the next step and move on. And he's an attacking left back as well, and he can play left wing as well, so he's versatile. And it just frustrates the hell out of me that we're letting these players go. So when I saw that link with Andre, which is why I brought him up, I just thought, can we afford to miss out on this? Because we've missed out on so many Brazilian players. You said Leonardo is one of them. Andre Santos, another one. There was the attacking midfielder.
Franca.
Mateus Franco. We've missed out on so many that look like we've done deals to Newcastle United, and I'm like, can we really afford to keep missing out in this market? I don't know, boys. Chris, whoever, are you in the same mindset? Because that's my thoughts at the moment.
I'm totally frustrated with this, and this is where the conversation with the lads I mentioned on Twitter started, because we keep getting linked, or our names being mentioned, and we've got Steve Nixon going to Brazil and scouting as well, and I think we brought in someone specifically to scout in the South American market, and this guy, look, he's now a Football Manager legend because everyone signs him in the game first. Pete, you did it, and so did I. He can play a left back and left wing, and he does kind of stand out with a red-headed Argentinian lad. He looks more Irish than anything else, but I can't believe other clubs apart from Brighton aren't all over this guy. Really can't. Like, whatever about us, I think we should definitely be in the mix. But we're missing out left, right, and centre, and on these. Maybe it's a few years off, and we'll take the gamble on some of these guys in. That's what I'm hoping. Like I said, that's why. Foxy was on it there. Knew Foxy be on it. But
as well at Man City, Echeverry.
Yeah.
LB's been absolutely waxing lyrical about this lad, and I think they're going to loan him back potentially to Man City. They're going to sign him up and loan him back. But this guy, they're talking about kind of in the same realms as kind of the next leader like Messi. Like that's how they're talking about Echeverry. He's only a young lad. I think he's only like 18, 19, something like that. But they're napping these players up. They've got so much potential in South America. And we've got South Americans in our squad that we could encourage to get these players over. No, sorry, it was another comment that Foxy put further up. He put about Andre. He put Andre is Bruno. I think I've started from Foxy. Andre is Bruno's partner in the national team in the field. Like, why wouldn't you get a guy like that in? It just makes perfect sense. They know each other. They're partners in terms of their game. Bruno's 26, 27. Like, wouldn't that be the perfect transition for Newcastle? Maybe they've got a master plan. I don't know, but seeing these moves go by and we're not being part of the conversation, I'm frustrated. But I know Daz was frustrated way before I was, and it just annoys me that these moves are going by.
I just thought, that's the kind of thing we would be doing. Like, we can't compete because of FFP for the massive name players and the big money. So bring them in young and develop them, and then if you want, maybe sell them on and make profit as well. If do a bit of trading then, but we just don't seem to be at that stage in the project yet. I've kind of given up now on all these South American players that we get tentatively linked with, because we don't seem to be in the running for the real running for them at all. Maybe it's going to come at a later stage when we can take that gamble, but we seem to be just more focused on players that are either playing in the Premier League or English, and unless they're like really, really exceptional, like Isaac Botman and Bruno, we bring them in then, but we're not taking those gambles that other clubs are. Even the likes of Palace are doing it, so Brighton I've already been doing it for a number of years. So
I might be getting this wrong, but isn't Barco? You said Dazzy looked more Irish than Argentinian. Are you referring to the fact he's got ginger hair?
Yeah,
we spoke about this, didn't we, with Antonio Mango? Because he showed us a picture of him.
We did, yeah.
Didn't he? Yeah, I thought it was him. Yeah. But yeah, it is frustrating. And the thing that annoys me as well is the fact that you're talking about £10 million for Brighton. And I've spoken about this for years now. The likes of Chelsea, the likes of Liverpool, the likes of Arsenal, Man United, they'll sign these players. And if you're getting prospects in for, a reasonable price, like 10 million or under or whatever, it kind of feels like a no-brainer, because half the time, even if these players don't make it, or, it doesn't quite pan out for them, you're getting them at a great age. So even if you keep them for 2 or 3 years and then they get to 22, 23, 24, when you sell them on, because the market, progresses, and the fact that they're playing for a Premier League club or a top Premier League club, you always get your money back on them. You're never going to make a loss on them, because they're good. Even if they move to a higher Championship club or a lower Premier League club, someone will go, oh, he plays for Liverpool, or he plays for Newcastle or Chelsea or Man United or Arsenal. Oh, we must be half decent. Oh yeah, go on, yeah, we'll pay 15 million for him. Chelsea and Liverpool have been doing it so much recently. I mean, if you look recently at Liverpool, they sell Solanki for, I think it was, 25 million to Bournemouth. And then they sold Brewster to Sheffield United, 20 million. They didn't pay that for them. These clubs just constantly churn out these players. And when they realise they're not going to reach that level, they just go, right, Sam, we'll sell them on and we'll make a few quid, and then we'll go again and again and again. And that's what the big clubs do.
Yeah, and it just seems like we're not there yet. They're not in a position to gamble. I think I remember Amanda Stavely saying that we have to get every signing right in the, because of the restrictions. And look, at they've got one wrong in one sense with Tonali. No fault of theirs. It was in the background and no one knew about it. But it has cost us to some degree as well. We'd be higher up the table with Tonali in the squad. But yeah, I'm hoping that we do eventually get to that stage that we're competing as well, and we when we get linked to someone, we at least try and put in a bid for them, and but not yet, I'm afraid.
Dad, a few questions to round up the show.
A few. How about 32? Right.
Yeah, well,
we've touched on this one from Tom about Lascelles. We've touched on that one already. Let's go with this one from Tom as well. Would you consider selling Sean Longstaff, lads? We did touch on it a bit last night, but since he's on the poster, let's take that one. Would you consider it?
I don't think Pete made the point yesterday that Sean Longstaff isn't a player that we should be looking to move on. However, if the price is right, I hate to quote Brucey, but if there was a ridiculous price being offered, you've got to sit up and take notes. It's the same with the likes of Joe Willock. You probably don't want to see Joe Willock move on, but if someone came in and said, "Oh, we'll give you 20-25 million for Joe Willock," all of a sudden you go, "Oh, actually, that's a pretty good deal." You can argue the same with Murphy, the same with Almanon. There's probably a lot of players where you look at it and you go, "Actually, yeah." Because what if someone came in for 30 million for Sean Longstaff, what does that do for our FFP? What does that do for our ability to spend money? I don't want to see Sean Longstaff go. If someone came in with a 10 million offer for Sean Longstaff, you'd laugh them out the room. But if someone came in and serious offer and went 25 million Sean Longstaff, all of a sudden you're going, who could we buy with that money?
That point.
I got to go to this question. I know you guys would have seen it earlier as well from DXK. Chris, could you put? This is where you were asking about the poll. Yeah, you have to do that on YouTube itself. Which striker would you rather see move to Newcastle? Solanki, Ekiteke, Mitrovic, Calvert-Lewin, and Shu follows up with: is there neither option? Because that's what I'd be picking. I don't want any of them really. Yeah.
Well, first of all, DXK, you made a big mistake asking me because I'm like the biggest technophobe ever. So I wouldn't have asked me, mate. I will find out though, and we will do a poll next time we're on. I'll make sure I work that out. Yeah. No one will like this, but if I had to pick one, I'd pick Ekiteke.
So would I of the bunch there.
Yeah, I think again talking about ceilings, I think he's got the biggest ceiling. Calvert-Lewin, too injury prone. Mitrovic, been there, done that. Even though I loved Mitro, by the way. And Solanki, no. But I think Ekiteke, if you got him on a reasonable deal, I think he'd probably be the best option, even though I know a lot of people will say, "Oh, we don't want him, he hates us," and all stuff like that. But if he comes to Newcastle and starts banging goals in, we'll forget about all that enjoy malarkey. That'll just be forgotten.
I'm not as forgiving as you guys, man. Not a chance of my taking Ekiteke. You get one shot at the title, and there is no way I'll be taking him back at Newcastle. I'll probably be going for Solanki, just because. I think he's probably got the best pedigree now to do the business at Newcastle. Look, would I have him as my first choice replacement for the likes of Callum Wilson? Probably not. As we've already talked about on the show, there's plenty of other options out there, but I just think he'd probably be the best of that bunch for a lot of the reasons that you've said. Mitrovic doesn't fit the style. Calvert-Lewin is just never fit. Ekiteke, less said the better.
Yeah. Look, if you gave us Solanki on a free, I'd take him. But no, if we're talking like in the 40 million plus bracket, no, use it elsewhere. Right, I want to answer David Cook here. When I was talking about journalists earlier. So, Daz, if their journalists linked us to KK, would you believe them? They did link us to KK, and no, I didn't believe them because I was the only one talking about KK, and someone jumped on that bandwagon. And not a hope we're getting him now. His prices were way too.
Well, don't say that. He's not having a great season, and that's not to say he's
falling out. His agent falling out with Osimhen.
Yeah. What I would say is that I think one of KK or Osimhen goes in the summer. I don't think both will go, but I think one of them leaves in the summer. Now, what I would say is that KK would probably command less of a fee than Osimhen, particularly because he's had a down season. So I'm not saying it's happening, but I wouldn't rule it out completely. So I'm trying to keep your hopes up there, Daz.
I think price would be crazy now.
Oh, I don't know.
I can't see it. Or maybe I'm just playing it down, doing it anyhow. Ivan Toney. When we're talking about Solanki, I don't want to throw in Ivan Toney into this. Ivan Toney, I'd take yes over Solanki every day of the week and over Watkins. But that you talked about earlier, Chris. I like Watkins. It would be Toney, Watkins, and Solanki of those three for me.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, that'd be my three. I think with Ivan Toney, I think he's been full.
Oh,
I
thought that was me then. I thought I got off.
So did I.
I think, yeah, I'm on the same lines as you and Chris. Ivan Toney is way and above the other two. For me, I'd pay whatever Brentford wanted to get Ivan Toney out of the club. I think that's how good he is. I think he's really grown into a top player. But that's me.
I'll remove Chris for a second. Shout out to Jamie Burton.
Oh, yeah.
He's been in hospital last 2 weeks, but he's feeling better now. So I hope you make the full recovery, Jamie, and great to have you with us.
Definitely.
Nice one. Next question. This one from DXK. Chris is back. We'll go straight to Chris with this one.
It's all right, man.
Do you think Minta will play in the first team next season, Chris?
No, I think he'll be. Well, I think he'll be in the squad, but I don't think he'll be a first team player. As in starting 11 every week, is what I'd say.
Yeah. Ease him in. In the Premier League, that's what Eddie Howe would do. All right. But we know. We also know we want someone else on that right wing, but maybe sell Miggy, cash out on Miggy, and but that's a squad game question. We'll get to that later in the season. And see, Foxy has said about Christensen accepted a wage cut with Barca this season from 168k to 149k. Will he accept less than 100 at Newcastle?
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah, I would say he'd probably have to drop that down. I don't think it'd be less than 100, but I think 115, 120 maybe. I think would maybe get a deal because of his experience and the fact that he's won trophies in his career. I think he could command a contract of at least 100 grand a week. So I think 115, 120. If he was to come to Newcastle, I think that's probably what they would agree. And I think Newcastle would be, because he's coming from Barcelona, maybe agree to pay that.
Cool. We all agree on this one. From Tangy, Gibbs White is a fantastic player. I know there was Nobby was in the chat area having a go at Gibbs White, but we all love Gibbs White here as well. One here from Rich Joblin. Good question here from Rich. If we don't get European football, do we keep hold of the likes of Bruno, Botman, and Isak? I would hope so, but we leave ourselves open if we do that. The vultures will come circling, as we kind of touched on before. But what do you think?
I think we do for one season. Oh, by the way, just a little. Sorry to take over there, Daz. Thought you might enjoy that. But yeah, I think we keep hold of them for one season. I think if it happened 2 seasons on the bounce,
that Chris, it's not happening 2 seasons on the bounce.
No, I don't think so either.
Not a chance.
No.
Not a chance. Those boys aren't going anywhere. The only one I'd be slightly concerned about is Bruno. The other two, not a chance.
Cool. Tom was getting in on the Swedish House Mafia as well with "Don't you worry, child."
Big tune.
Good tune. Big tune. We have to get the rave on again. Where are we going next? Yeah, one for you, Chris. Tony is mad for a transfer. He loves the old transfers. But devil's advocate for the lads, Chris Hall special. Sell Bruno for 100 million to a foreign club, or sell Miley for 50 million to a Premier League team for FFP, obviously. God. Is there a option C?
I know. I mean, I think I would say Bruno, only for the fact that I think what Pete said the other week is that I don't think Bruno will be here in 3 or 4 years anyway. So I would probably say Bruno. Not that I want Bruno to go, but yeah, I think Miley. I wouldn't want to see Miley in the Premier League either with another club. So yeah, I think I'd say Bruno on that one. But good question.
Pete, is that you're not going to answer this, are you?
I'm not. I'm going to your option C. Selling neither.
Well, let us see.
We'll use the Adidas deal to sign our players in the summer. That's
I'd see here. Send Mark Gillespie to Sports Direct. Yes, from the club shop to Sports Direct. Done. That's pretty much it for the questions. Stu, one from Stu. If we get Phillips and Solanki, is that a good window for us? No, just get Phillips. Forget Solanki. Don't buy Solanki at any cost.
I don't know how I'd feel. Yes, I want a forward. Yes, we want that third option. I don't know how I'd feel if it's a great question from Stu. If we got Phillips in on a loan and then we spent 40 million on Solanki, I don't know how I'd feel about it. I think it's got Chris Wood vibes. I think I'd be like, oh, okay, we've got another striker in. But with Chris Wood, it was weakening Burnley when we were in real big trouble. Whereas with Bournemouth, I think I'd just be a bit like, oh, we're going to struggle to get rid of him in 12, 18 months when we will probably want to get rid of him. I think I'd be disappointed if we brought in Solanki for 40 million. If we got Solanki in for a reasonable price, as in like 15, 20 million, which is probably far too low, Bournemouth would never sell for that. Yeah, maybe, but not for the price that I think they would probably want.
Yeah. I would say Phillips and a right winger, I'd be very happy.
Yeah, I'd settle for that.
So we're not going to be singing this one from Jason Scott. Botman at the back, Solanki in attack. Newcastle are going on the way to the championship at that rate. This one, we'll end on this one from Tribute for Prime Minister before we go to the sponsors. If we're actually trying to sign Solanki when we have Isaac, Wilson back soon, and Gordon with only one game a week, when we have no right winger or no number 6, I'm going to punch someone. So on that note, that's it for the questions.
Fair play. No, it's a great point from Trippier for Prime Minister. We do forget that we've got one game a week, other than our exploits in the FA Cup that might push a game or two out into midweek. I think that's more than fair. But look, great stuff from Ben Jacobs tonight. Great insight. If you're watching it or you're just coming in live right now, go back and watch the conversation with Ben Jacobs for the first hour. Brilliant stuff. And we threw some players out there for the second half of the hour in that they've been linked with Newcastle United. Conversations all round from us boys. Make sure you check it out if you haven't already. We've had over 10 brand new subscribers tonight, so thank you for those that have subscribed to the channel. If you haven't already, make sure you click that like and subscribe to the channel if you're new. And as we said tonight, tell a friend to tell a friend. So many of you in the chat talk about the fact that we don't have the subscribers that you guys think we deserve, and we're just happy to put this content out, and we enjoy putting the content out in the way that we do, and we'll continue to do so. But let as many people know about this channel as possible, and get them to subscribe to the channel and take our numbers up. But the fact that you're joining with us tonight and putting your questions in is the most important thing. That is for sure. Quick shout out before we move on and wrap up the show to our sponsors. So massive thanks to those at the Radiator Share. Thank you, Russ and the team, as always. And of course, they provide top quality materials made from plate steel, providing longevity all designed and manufactured in Italy as well, and they offer a home survey service and will install it if required. So just checking out some of these. I'm on the different thread, so I don't see some of these pictures when I'm doing away days and stuff. Hey, look at that.
Yeah, it's impressive,
cool.
isn't it?
Cool. Fantastic work. And massive thanks to the Install Works. Thank you for your support, Northeast Partnership. Thank you all for your support, and of course, repping Loaded Mag NUFC. And thank you to Bathroom Designs H2O for all your support as a sponsorship. And look, just to give you a little sample for those that are new and subscribed tonight for the channel, here is a little something of what they can provide, and I believe they've got even more in the works. So keep an eye out on more to come very, very soon. And look, we've had a few memberships tonight. If you want to become a member and you want to be like George and you want to win those prize draws, click that blue button there and become a member for $1.99 a month. You can do it on a laptop, not a mobile phone. So make sure that you're on a laptop and you click that blue button. It only takes literally a minute to be able to become a member, but it means the world to us. And of course, something I tend to forget is letting you guys know where you can find us. And of course, so many platforms that you can find us on. YouTube, of course, where you're watching right now, Spotify, Apple Music, and Amazon Music as well. But on socials, where all the shows get promoted out, and we put all our content out for you guys to see before and after the show. Of course, you can find us on X, Twitter, however you want to say it, Instagram, and of course, TikTok as well. And for any business inquiries, there you can see Loaded Mag NUFC info@gmail.com. Anyone that wants to become a sponsor of the channel, anyone that wants to have an inquiry about anything Loaded Mag NUFC related, and you want to partner up with us, make sure you drop us an email and get involved in that as well. I really enjoyed that, boys. Great chat. Fantastic 2 shows that we've had this week with Zach Lowry and then tonight with Ben Jacobs. Absolutely spot on. More to come over the course of this week. We are back again. I don't know if you've got the old pick ready.
I do. Here we go.
Tomorrow night. Previewing the big game. It's LB from Man City. We'll be coming on to talk all things Newcastle United versus Man City. Massive, massive game. Saturday night kickoff. Cannot wait for that one. And we'll be getting the lowdown from the Man City end on all things Man City and Newcastle. So yeah, the Oil Classico.
Question there, Pete. Is the guy in the picture there going to be on the show? Because that is not LB. That does not look like him.
I'll let you ask him that.
No, that's not him. And then, as well as that, then we're at the weekend. We will be back at probably Saturday night. We need to confirm that, but we'll be back for the reaction to that game and hopefully celebrating a Newcastle win. Would even take a draw for that one. So bring that on Saturday night probably. So keep an eye on when that will drop. That is it. Great show, as Pete said. Back again tomorrow. So, we did so much talking about the Swedish, this, that, and the other. We're going to change it up. Let's bring on the Isaac.
I know what you're doing.